Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep into Shane Parrish's framework for clear thinking. And the core idea here is it's immediately challenging because it really flips the script on how we think about success.
It really does. We're all conditioned to think about those huge, life-altering decisions.
Right, the big investment, the career change, that kind of thing.
And that's exactly where Parrish says we miss the point. Our sources really emphasize that success isn't built in those few, dramatic moments. It's forged in the multitude of what he called ordinary moments.
These are the micro moments, the ones that happen, a dozen times a day,
Ooh.
where we react. We don't even realize we're making a choice.
Exactly. And the cost of ceding that control, of just living by reflex, it's staggering.
Because you're basically handing the wheel over to your biological defaults. And that just creates these massive unforced errors. They drain your energy, and they can completely derail your long-term goals.
It's defined so well in the material. In the space between stimulus and response, you can consciously pause, or you can cede control and execute a default behavior.
And that pause is everything.
That's where all the leverage is. If you just bypass it, the default behavior, which is usually, primitive and defensive, it just takes over.
We have a really visceral story that shows the immense cost of one single unchecked moment. It's about a CEO, a very successful guy, but he was known for having this incredibly quick temper.
So he's on a golf course, and an employee calls him unscheduled with a really urgent, serious crisis.
Instead of pausing, that emotional default just clicks on. He sees red, he yells at the employee, tells them they need to respect his time, and then hangs up with something like, people need to be put in their place.
Just a flash of anger, an ordinary moment.
But it changed everything.
Yeah.
The employee realizes the CEO is the problem, not the solution. So he goes around him, straight to the board of directors.
And not long after that, the CEO was fired.
Yeah. Years of work, the biggest title in the company, all undone by one bad reaction. That's the real danger here. One ripple can sink the whole ship.
So we have to start by understanding those ripples. I mean, if reaction is our default, what are we reacting to? Let's break down these 4 enemies of clear thinking.
And the key thing here is that these defaults, they were designed for, quick survival, fight or flight. But they are absolutely catastrophic for making good judgments in our complex modern world.
Okay, so let's start with the first one, the emotion default. This is that gut instinct to act immediately on any intense feeling, anger, fear, outrage.
Or even, excessive optimism.
Right.
We talk about Sonny Corleone in The Godfather. He's supposed to be the heir. He's smart. He's capable. But he is just completely governed by that quick temper.
Oh, absolutely. When his sister gets beaten, he doesn't pause. He doesn't strategize.
He just flies across the country and beats his brother-in-law in public. I mean, creating a huge visible problem for the entire family.
And even more destructively, think about the drug meeting. Vito is playing it cool, but Sonny, driven by greed and impatience, he jumps in. He shows his hand.
And that tells the rivals everything they need to know. It confirms that if Vito's out of the picture, Sonny will make the deal.
And that single impulsive reaction leads directly to the assassination attempt on his father and, ultimately his own death. He reacted to the bait instead of using reason to see the trap.
It's such a powerful lesson. But it's not just mobsters. We see this in high-pressure situations everywhere, like the Olympic rifle shooter, Matthew Emmons. He's poised for a gold medal.
Right. And under that immense pressure, he gets so focused on managing his internal state, a classic emotion default, that he skips the crucial pre-shot checklist.
He's just thinking, calm down, calm down. And in that moment of managing his anxiety, he shoots the wrong target, a score of 0.
So the emotion default isn't always rage. Sometimes it's just that internal chatter that distracts you from the actual process.
Okay, so if the emotion default is the internal fire, then the ego default is. It's like the internal shield. It's that constant desire to feel right, to protect our spot in the social hierarchy.
Yeah, this is where we start valuing the appearance of success more than actual success. The tragedy of Benedict Arnold is the perfect, if painful, illustration. He was a war hero. His betrayal wasn't about ideology.
No, it was all about his deep, almost pathological pride. He felt slighted by Congress, by other officers. He was living way beyond his means, trying to impress the wealthy elite.
So when General Washington gives him even a mild reprimand,
A light one, yeah.
his ego default just screams. He needs everyone to see him as this great man he believes he is, and when reality doesn't match that story, he lashes out. He betrays his country.
It's a really common mechanism, isn't it? When we get so consumed by proving our own value, Our judgment about the long term just gets clouded by the need to protect our self-image right now.
Now let's pivot to the external pressures, starting with the social default. This is that powerful, invisible pull to just conform to what the group is doing.
Even when you know it's not the best path.
Especially then, because conforming feels safe. The material points out that managers rarely have an incentive to make the, quote, intelligent but with some chance of looking like an idiot decision.
Because if you fail doing something unconventional, you look reckless. But if you fail conventionally, doing what everyone else was doing.
Nobody blames you. You just failed with the group. The pressure of social scorn is often a much stronger motivator than actually achieving the best outcome.
You see it in every company that sticks with some terrible legacy system because that's how we've always done it, even while everyone is complaining about it.
Exactly. It's the consensus trap. It's why a brilliant but radical idea gets shot down in a brainstorming session. Not because it's a bad idea, but because it violates the established norm. We prioritize fitting in over winning.
And that leads right into the final one, the inertia default. Just pure resistance to change. We are comfort-seeking creatures after all.
Inertia keeps us stuck. It's why people stay in jobs they hate or use processes they know are broken. The effort to change just seems greater than the pain of staying the same.
Historically, inertia has fought every single major innovation. Critics dismiss the automobile as a fad, too loud, too expensive.
It disrupted the comfort of the horse and buggy, same skepticism for the airplane, the radio, the internet. Once something is good enough, we stop trying to make it better.
And the longer we avoid that difficult conversation or that hard pivot, the more emotionally costly it becomes to actually make the change later on.
So these four defaults, emotion, ego, social, and inertia, are these powerful, unconscious algorithms running in the background. If we want to interrupt them, we have to build some internal structure.
Right, which brings us to what Parrish calls the essential self-strengths. These are the four pillars we need to build to create that all-important pause between the stimulus and the response.
And the foundation for all of it is self-accountability. This means taking complete ownership of the situation, regardless of whether it's your fault.
That's a huge distinction. I remember an early project, a piece of software that was late. I got called out, and I immediately went into the victim's story. The scope changed. I had too many meetings. The bus was stuck in the snow.
So you were explaining why it wasn't your fault.
Exactly. And my colleague just cut me off. He said, "It is your responsibility to our team to deliver on time. Stop explaining how you failed and start giving me a plan for how you will fix it."
That's the shift. From being a victim who blames circumstances to an agent focused on what you can actually control.
It strips away all that emotional baggage of blame and just focuses your energy on the outcome.
Which leads to the second strength, self-knowledge. You have to know your vulnerabilities, your limits. It's Charlie Munger's circle of competence.
Right.
Munger's advice was pretty blunt. When you play games where other people have the aptitude and you don't, you're going to lose. You have to be brutally honest about the environments that exploit your weaknesses.
Which then feeds directly into self-control. And this isn't about, some dramatic burst of willpower.
No, the sources are clear on this. Emotional intensity is way less important than disciplined consistency. Self-control is just the quiet, reliable discipline of showing up day after day, no matter how you feel.
It's the boring consistency of the checklist.
Which is the best defense against the ego and emotion defaults.
And finally, we have self-confidence. This is trusting your own abilities and value, which, and this seems like a paradox, is what allows for real humility.
It does seem contradictory, doesn't it? But confidence without humility is just overconfidence. That's the ego default in disguise.
Confident people have the strength to say, "I don't know," or "I was wrong."
It allows for outcome over ego. Let's go back to that executive competing for the CEO job.
Right. She had her own solution to a huge problem. Her identity was all wrapped up in it. But her rival presented a plan that was just objectively better, simpler, cheaper, less risky.
So her initial instinct, the ego default, was to fight for her idea. But her core self-confidence was strong enough that she could face reality. She publicly changed her position.
She praised her rival's plan and fully supported it.
And that made all the difference. The board saw someone who could put the company's best interest ahead of her own ego, and she got the job.
That's a perfect example.
Well,
Okay, so building these strengths is the internal work, but we also need external supports. We need safeguards.
Safeguards are the practical steps you take when you're at your best calm, rational, to protect yourself from yourself when you're at your worst, when you're tired, stressed, hungry.
One of the best ones comes from Daniel Kahneman. Replace decisions with rules.
Because willpower is finite. We burn through it all day making choices. So automate your behavior by setting rules in advance.
Kahneman's personal rule was just brilliant in its simplicity. He would never say yes to a request on the phone.
Why? Because the immediacy, the social pressure, it makes it almost impossible to say no.
So his rule forced a pause. He'd just say, I'll have to get back to you. And that pause allowed reason to step in.
But the single most critical safeguard, really, is that first step, problem definition. You have to make sure you're solving the right problem.
We have to be defining the root cause, not just, fighting the symptom.
Exactly. We see a fire, we try to put it out, but we never ask why it started. Think about the LA dog rescue. They were totally overwhelmed, just treating the symptom of shelter overcrowding.
So they stopped asking the symptom question, how can we get more people to adopt?
And they started asking the root cause question. What would have to be true for there to be fewer dogs to adopt in the first place?
That one shift in the question changed everything.
It was revolutionary. They dug into the data and found that 30% of the dogs were owner surrenders. Not because of a lack of love, but because of financial hardship. People couldn't afford food or vet care.
So the problem wasn't a lack of adopters, it was a lack of resources for current owners.
Right. And the solution was that it was actually cheaper to provide those resources, food, shots, temporary boarding, than it was to house the animals in the shelter.
An amazing result. So once the problem is defined, the next safeguard is about solution exploration and countering that trap of binary thinking.
Binary thinking, the idea that you only have two options, A or B, is just a dangerous oversimplification. It's a form of the inertia default, really.
It just limits your imagination.
So to break out of it, the sources recommend the 3+ principle. Force yourself to come up with at least 3 possible solutions, even if 2 seem silly. That third option often cracks open the whole problem.
And you have to push for both and options. Instead of choosing between keeping costs down or investing in customers, ask, how can we do both?
Can I stay at my job and start a side hustle? Combinations often create the best results. And finally, all this is useless without good information. We need safeguards for information quality.
We need high fidelity or hi-fi information, unfiltered, close to the source. Because as information travels up an organization, it gets sterilized.
So the safeguard here is to change how you ask questions. Don't just ask people what they think, ask them how they think.
Ask, what are the variables you'd use to make this decision?
You're trying to get to their underlying logic. You want to earn the knowledge, not just blindly copy their answer.
So we've got the path. Neutralize the defaults, build the strengths, apply the safeguards. But then how do we know if we actually made a good decision?
This is where we have to fundamentally shift our thinking and adopt the process principle. You evaluate the process you used, not the outcome.
Because our brains are wired for what's called resulting. We equate a good outcome with a good decision and a bad outcome with a bad decision.
And that's a psychological trap. It completely blinds you to the role of luck. If you get a great result from a terrible process, you learn the wrong lesson and you're set up for a disaster down the road.
The classic example is Coach Pete Carroll's call in the Super Bowl, throwing the ball at the goal line instead of running it.
The outcome was a catastrophe, an interception. They lost the game. The public response was brutal. Worst decision ever.
But Carroll stood by the process because at that specific moment, based on probabilities, clock management, the defensive lineman, throwing the ball was the statistically sound call.
A right call can still get a bad outcome. If you only judge by the interception, you learn nothing. If you judge the logic of the process, you learn everything you need for the next time.
Okay, so this brings us to the ultimate question. All this skill is worthless if it's not aimed at the right target. We have to figure out what's worth wanting.
And here we run straight into the hedonic treadmill, this relentless chase for money, status, power, believing the next promotion or the next zero in the bank account will finally bring happiness.
But it never does it? You get there, and you just revert to your old base-level discontent. You start taking the good things you have for granted.
We heard about the retired CEO who spent his whole life winning the external game. He got the wealth, the prominence, but after he retired, his golf friends all disappeared.
He realized he'd been trying to win the wrong game, prioritizing his ego's demand for status over real, meaningful relationships.
Wisdom, then, is about turning your future hindsight into your current foresight. This is the value of memento mori, considering your own death. Or, more practically, Jeff Bezos's regret minimization framework.
Right, asking, What will my 80-year-old self regret most?
And Bezos knew he wouldn't regret trying and failing to build Amazon, but he knew the pain of not trying at all would, as he said, haunt me every day.
Research on the elderly confirms this. They overwhelmingly regret worrying about things that never happened, all those fears fueled by the emotion default.
And they regret not prioritizing time with family and work they genuinely loved. And their most critical insight is this: happiness is a choice, not a condition. It's a function of your daily process.
So we've gone from the invisible forces, the defaults that push us to react, to finding the strengths and safeguards that create that conscious pause.
And we end here with the understanding that the goal isn't just to be effective, but to be wise, to align our decisions right now with what truly matters in the long run.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now as you walk away from this deep dive?
If you look back on your life today, your decisions, your career, your relationships, what's going to be the greatest source of regret? Will it be the things you did, the risks you took and failed at? Or will it be the things you chose not to do? The moments you caved to social pressure or protected your ego or just gave in to complacency? The biggest test of a person is the degree to which they are willing to non-conform to do the right thing. Choose the hard, right path over the easy, default path.